Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig on this, this fine Sunday morning. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We recognize that this is, because it's the weekend, it's one of our pre-recorded editions, but we appreciate you guys tuning in anyway. Today is going to be a real interesting topic, in case you could not tell by the title. So before we get started, please, once again, remember to like and share these videos. Let folks know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or we're going to lose them. So let's use them. Let's exercise that free speech and let everybody know what's up. All right. So we all know that in the wake of the Parkland high school shooting, or the high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, we all kind of knew that there was going to be a whole nother wave of gun control legislation because the gun grabbing left, well, let's just be honest, they cannot let a good tragedy go to waste. That is probably the most significant piece of advice that former Chief of Staff to Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel, left for his Democratic colleagues. And, let's put it this way. They seem to be wasting absolutely no time taking him up, or at least following his advice. Now, one of the proposals that's being offered is the idea of an ammunition tax here in the state of California, which, by the way, I'm surprised it's the first time that they are proposing this here in the state of California. I was actually wondering what took them so long. But let's check out the story here, and then we'll talk about kind of the interesting twist on the other side.
State lawmakers are introducing a wave of gun violence bills with the intention of prevention. For Assemblymember Jim Cooper, the focus is recognizing children in need of intervention early on.
And a lot of these kids have trouble, especially in the middle and junior high school years. We really want to target them. And because of budget cuts, a lot of schools don't have counselors.
Cooper introducing a bill that will mandate school counselors at the middle and junior school level, as well as fund school resource officers at high school campuses. Money that will come by imposing a new tax on firearm and ammunition purchases.
So we're not banning guns or ammunition, but we would tax that. And to me, it's a small price to pay.
Craig DeLuz with the Firearms Policy Coalition disagrees.
What we're looking at is an emotional reaction. We saw something very challenging and very tragic occur in Parkland, Florida. And the natural instinct of anyone is to want to do something. The problem is that doing something is not necessarily the same as doing something effective.
As a parent and school board member, DeLuz supports additional security and counseling resources on campuses, but is against taxing a Second Amendment right for funding.
We're going to single out a particular group of law-abiding citizens, and we're going to require them to shoulder the burden that, quite frankly, all of us as taxpayers need to be meeting.
The School Gun Violence Prevention Act is the latest in a divided conversation to make mass shootings a tragedy of the past. At the state capitol, Vicki Gonzalez, KCRA 3 News.
All right, so Assemblyman Jim Cooper, who represents part of the Sacramento area. So I know Assemblyman Cooper. I know him about as well as you know any politician that's in your local area. We're not good. We're not homeboys. We're not close friends or anything like that. But safe to say that he is not a friend of gun owners. He's a former deputy sheriff here in Sacramento County. He's run for sheriff, I believe, at least once. I believe he may have run more than once, but he's run for sheriff, county sheriff here at least once, and has always introduced bills that he doesn't want to say are anti-gun, and he doesn't want to admit are anti-Second Amendment and anti-civil rights, but nonetheless seem to do so. In this particular case, what he's saying is, first of all, understand that when he first started talking about this, he was talking about it as a fee. Now, there's a difference between a fee and a tax here in California, in that a fee only requires a simple majority in the California state legislature, in each house of the legislature. A tax requires a supermajority, or 2/3 vote in each house. I think what he's come to recognize is that if originally he talked about it as a fee. Now, the problem with the fee is that there has to be a nexus between who's paying the fee and what it is that they're doing with the money. So the idea of hiring counselors in high school and middle school, and the idea of hiring armed campus guards or campus resource officers, which, by the way, they're just saying campus resource. I don't know if they're actually going to be armed because, well, honestly, the legislation hasn't been introduced yet, but so we don't know exactly which it's going to be. But I don't understand exactly what the nexus between the two are, unless, of course, the counselors are only going to be made available in the event that someone who legally purchased their firearm or ammunition is involved in an incident on campus, or something like that. That's the only reason why I would see that there's a nexus. But by calling it a tax, now it's simply saying, okay, we recognize a need. And, hey, I'm a school board member. I told you, I see the need. I see if we can hit some of these students and talk to some of these students and address some of the issues like with this guy in Parkland, Florida. See, recognize, and by the way, they actually did see, recognize, and were in a position to try and address it earlier. In Florida, they just didn't. But if we're in a position to be able to see that and address that and keep something like that from happening, I'm not against that. But that's something that all taxpayers need to be paying. That's not something that we're simply going to look at one segment of society in order to pay. We don't just look in no other area, with no other civil right. There's voter fraud. Why don't we tax voters? Why don't we tax voters in order to address the issue and pay for voter fraud? Or how about this? How about we tax welfare recipients in order to help fight welfare fraud? I'm just trying to think about in what other area do we tax law-abiding citizens in order to address the issues of people who don't follow the law, and in many cases never will follow the law. That just makes absolutely no sense, except for this fact, and this is just the truth. At least here in California, we have this addiction to taxing them. Doesn't matter who them are, as long as them aren't me, as long as them aren't us. Well, then we can tax them. We can tax the rich. We can tax people who smoke. We can tax people who drink alcohol. We can tax the big oil companies, right? As long as I'm not paying the tax, then I'm okay with taxing them. The other thing is that I'm just curious. If these things are all so evil, if ammunition and guns are so evil, then why does government need to increase its share? Why does government need to be the biggest beneficiary, the biggest profiteer from guns and ammunition? They do the same thing with cigarettes, alcohol, sodas, right? Junk food, these junk food taxes. All of these things are, you've got fuel, you've got fossil fuel. All of these things that are supposed to be big, evil, nasty, mean things that we should not have, all of a sudden the government is profiting from and using it. And these politicians are using it to implement their programs. One great example is marijuana and the fact that they've decided to increase the tax, or no, they decided to legalize and tax marijuana sales, because they're figuring, well, hey, if we do this, we can regulate it. Not only can we regulate it, but we can tax it and we can make goo gobs of money. Yeah. State of California, how's that working out for you?
Well, if California's attempt at legalized marijuana is in crisis, tonight brought the first rescue operation, a new cannabis tax reform bill. Night Beat's Wilson Walker explains it might save consumers some money.
And now we have these people that want to play by the rules, do it the right way, and we need to support them.
A Southern California Republican and a Bay Area Democrat in agreement on at least one thing: taxes are threatening to crush legal marijuana.
Some businesses might make an economic decision to stay in the gray or the black market.
Think of it as a stimulus bill for an economy that is struggling.
The regulations and fees they continue to keep slapping us with are not fair.
We heard the complaints earlier this month at a meeting in Mendocino County.
I sold my farm yesterday. I did not want to, but the over-regulations have stopped me from being able to move forward.
So the bill's first tax cut is aimed squarely at businesses across the cannabis industry.
It suspends the cultivation tax, which is very difficult to administer and calculate.
So does suspending that help?
You know, I think it makes the numbers crunch for a lot more folks. Right now, there are tens of thousands of small businesses around the state looking at the proposition of doing business in the regulated market and realizing it's just not going to work.
And there is another payoff cooked into this bill, this one for consumers, so to speak.
And it reduces state excise tax from 15% to 11%.
The idea is that all of these tax cuts will actually pay off at the cash register when your marijuana costs go down by as much as 9%.
We believe that that will lessen the demand for black market purchases by 20%.
And so the revisions begin for Prop 64, now just 73 days old.
There's a consensus around the knowledge that we don't have it right yet.
In Sacramento on the Night Beat, I'm Wilson Walker.
You have got to be kidding me. So, all right, let me get this straight. So we are going to create a whole new tax on gun owners, on people who seek to exercise their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And at the same time, we are now going to cut taxes on an industry that manufactures and sells and consumes an item that at the federal level isn't even legal. It has been legal in the state of California for a little over 70 days, and they are already getting a bailout. Are you kidding me? I thought that we were going to get so much money from weed that, man, the schools were going to benefit and, you know, we're going to be able to put all this money into drug cessation programs because as we get people, you know, hooked on weed, we're going to be able to get them off weed and the government's just going to be swimming in cash. You know what's interesting about the whole thing? Here's what's a trip about it. So, because this is creating a black market because of the increased cost, there's a couple of issues here. Number one, the black market means people aren't going and they aren't paying the registration. They aren't dealing with the regulations, right? All it's done is take people who got into the industry thinking it was legal and they decided, well, you know what? I can't handle doing it legally, so either I'm going to get out of the business or I'm just going to do it illegally. It's increased the black market. By the way, there always was a black market. Now it's just bigger. Oh, and let us not forget, these entities can't bank at the federal level. So that means you've got a lot of these entities that are cash rich. They got cash and weed all over the place, just begging for someone to rob them. But hey, the money that they're going to save on by not complying with regulations or paying taxes, they're going to have to spend buying ammunition and firearms to defend themselves from the people who generally tend to perpetrate gun crimes, gang members, and people involved in drug business. Who would that be? Oh, in this case, illegal cannabis businesses as well. Folks, you know, I the other day I was talking with my good friend Mike from Arms Room Radio, and I told him, I said, you know, sometimes I wake up and I feel like I am in Bizarro World. I know some of you kids are too young to know that, but I feel like I wake up and I'm like, how can this possibly be? How can we have arrived at a place where we are taxing and increasing regulation on law-abiding citizens who want to exercise their constitutional rights, and yet we're cutting regulation and taxes on people who want to smoke dope? Someone explain this to me. You know, I know what it is. It's trying to increase the divide between those people who support marijuana and those people who support the Second Amendment, because, you know, at least the federal, you know, you're not supposed to own or possess a firearm if you use illicit or illegal drugs like marijuana, right? They're trying to create a rift. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that is the ultimate plan. Nah, I'm sorry. I don't give them that much credit. Folks, these people in the California State Legislature are not particularly bright. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like any other industry. It's like any other area, right? You have some people who are really sharp, who are really good at what they do. Some of those folks want to do right and do right, and some of those folks, yeah, they're good at what they do, but they're looking to get it for themselves and for their friends. Then you got the people who are okay. I mean, they're not bad. They're not great. They're not bad. But then you have the people who I wonder how they find their way to the Capitol building every morning. And anyone who believes that these two proposals, look at these two proposals side by side and do not recognize that there is an issue here, anybody who does not see that, well, they're either not being intellectually honest or they are idiots. And I would venture to say that most of the folks on the left in the California State Legislature who support the idea of legalized marijuana and oppose the idea of legalized firearms, they definitely fall squarely in one of those two camps. It is idiocy on full display, and only in the land of fruits and nuts can you get stuff like this. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like our Facebook page. Let everybody know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. You got to use them or you're going to lose them. Take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.